The Rabbit R1 is a tech product that has raised tens of millions in venture capital, promised the world, and delivered on almost none of it. Worse, though, it's built on a scam that the founder is now trying to distance himself from. But, hey, where are my manners? I'm trying to be more positive in 2024. So let's let this company introduce themselves at least before we say anything negative about them.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I'm the founder and CEO of Rabbit. This is the Rabbit R1. I can speak or type with R1. I can also use R1 to call a ride. I can also use R1 to order food. I can also make R1 to a set of more complex actions. For example, if I want to plan a trip to London, I can just describe what I wish in full to R1. You can order the R1 now at rabbit.tech, and we are shipping Easter 2024.
Well, there you go. That's not so bad. You got yourself a standard tech guy in a black shirt promising the world Apple keynote background. What could go wrong? Oh, and I guess it's past Easter 2024, so the product should have shipped. So before we talk about the scam angle, let's briefly check in with Tech YouTube for how this AI assistant is assistanting.
The thing that you get at the beginning is like borderline non-functional.
Book an Uber to LTT Labs.
The rideshare status is currently unavailable.
Get me a ride.
Apologies. The Uber ride request couldn't be processed.
What is this?
You are holding a taco.
Oh, that's not good. I could give them a few lessons on positivity. Turns out, basically everyone in the tech sector tag teamed this product for being non-functional or plain wrong about things that Rabbit said the R1 could handle. Things just weren't working. But what if I told you that wasn't the biggest scam? That this company is built on something much worse. And now that I've been so cheery and positive, let's go down the rabbit hole and see what's under the hood. Yes, it's a bunch of rabbit jokes. So the first thing we need to do is go to their webpage. The R1 is created by something called Rabbit Incorporated, but this company has a strange history. It was originally registered under a different name, Cyber Manufacture Co. In fact, they changed their name 2 months before their official announcement. And it turns out that name change is pretty significant because Cyber Manufacture Co. wasn't just like a shell company or the same company under a different name. They had separately raised venture capital for a completely different project. Not AI, it was for NFTs. Now, before you laugh, remember, this is 2021 when people took NFTs very seriously. According to a press release, the project was called Gamma, and it was at the intersection of gaming, community ownership, and Web3 buzzwords. What does that have to do with AI? Well, not really much. Conversely, Rabbit today also sort of wants nothing to do with crypto. Their founder, Jesse, announces for Rabbit, "Let me be clear, quote, we will never touch crypto. Never." Okay, well, that's pretty strong, but given their whole past is built on crypto NFTs, it's a little strange. Now, when Gamma is brought up, Jesse doesn't really deny that he ran the project. He sort of makes it sound like it was no big deal, just kind of a thing of the past. Quote, "Gamma was a fun little project I was involved with during early COVID time. My main work is to build a Unreal Engine 5 space station themed game that I later open sourced. Yes, Gamma released NFTs, and I bought a bunch myself just for fun. Never trade, never released any token or crypto coins, and I left that project once the game was open sourced." Well, there you go, haters. Case closed. It was a fun little multi-million-dollar project he did. He just built it on Unreal Engine. He may have sold a few NFTs, but he bought a few NFTs, so, it's not a scam. Please don't look into this. Please do not look into this. Is not a scam. Oh, some people may have looked into it. First, Emily Shepard, and then the writer and podcaster Ed Zitron jumped in the fray with a great article. Now, I spoke to Ed, and he told me a very different story than Jesse about this Gamma project.
It's so weird, and it's the same company. And in 2021, they raised this $6 million, and then Jesse Liu, across several hours of Clubhouse that I subjected myself to, promised the world and more.
Now, I have to say, promise the world and more is slightly inconsistent with fun little COVID project. So I decided I needed to listen to these recordings of Jesse talking about Gamma myself back in the day and find out who was really telling the truth. Jesse or Jesse?
I don't want to make Gamma, or none of us want to make Gamma as a hype and dump program. This is a legit team with millions of dollars of fundings behind. Basically, we're dumping millions of monies into it just to make sure that it will be a next level experiences.
Okay, I have to admit, it definitely sounds like Ed is right. This is sold as whatever the opposite of a quick NFT hype and dump project is. And this is where things get much weirder.
So NFT is only just the beginning, the very beginning of this. We probably think that the NFT part will only take, no more than 20% of the entire weight of this entire Gamma project. So after NFT, we have this huge, groundbreaking ideas about Gammaverse. Then after that, we have this, again, huge groundbreaking ideas about the clean energy versus Gamma coin. And that, the chances that Gamma coin become the first not only carbon neutral, but actually carbon negative crypto 2.0 or Bitcoin 2.0, I think that's completes the entire Gamma story.
Hopefully now you're starting to see why I think it's strange for Jesse to claim that Gamma was a fun little project where he never released these tokens or crypto coins, when that's sort of what he promised. He told people he was going to release a carbon negative Bitcoin 2.0. And look, I know it sounds stupid now, but again, 2021 was a different time. And remember, Jesse had millions in backing. It's not hard to see how people took him seriously. He said it didn't matter how the NFTs did. He was going to execute. But where are those millions? The money raised from customers. When the company changed to Rabbit, where did it go? Did it go to develop Rabbit, a completely different project? I don't know. I'd love to sit down with Jesse and find out. What I do know, though, is that so many of the promises of Gamma didn't happen. And this is relevant to the R1, not just because this project is built on the skeleton of that scam project. It's also because the R1 was overhyped in a similar way as a do-it-all device. But this same company isn't some historyless company. They have a history of abandoning investors like they did with Gamma NFTs. I mean, Jesse even told people who were worried about the NFTs, don't pay attention to that. It's all going to work out. You just got to be a true supporter.
I would suggest for our true supporters, do not pay too much detail about the current NFT mechanisms, because that doesn't matter. I can safely say that even if the entire NFT project completely failed, which I don't think that's the case, we're gonna still push the Gammaverse, and we're gonna still push the clean energy and Gamma coin happen using our funds.
I cannot emphasize enough, that was a lie. That never happened. The clean energy Gamma coin never got published or built or launched, even though Jesse said they were going to do it. They had the money. By the way, we all know it's vaporware, but I think it's important to really hear him sell it, because this is the same guy who wants you to take him seriously when he sells you the future of AI. Take a listen to the whole vision really laid out.
Gamma coin, which is basically Bitcoin 2.0, that is 100% generated by clean energy. And we did the math, we did the calculations to where if you own over 1,800 megawatts of clean energy generation, that means you will have extra generated electricity that you can donate back to city grid. So the general concept is, let's say if you own a Gamma NFT, that means you own the equal portion in valuation of your NFTs at that moment of that clean energy grid that we started building in the real world. That means you own that power, that portion of the clean energy solar panels that generates that power. And that means you own that power. And that also means that you own that portion of that power, and that power will be used to generate Gamma coins. That means you can earn your Gamma coins out of this entire clean energy cycle.
All right. Let's try to suspend our disbelief for a second here and figure this out. Basically, he's saying buying NFTs somehow would build a clean energy grid, which you would sort of co-own, which would make clean tokens, sort of the thing. And look, I know that sounds a little insane, but the funny thing is, it's sort of the most sensible part of this project because, as I learned, that wasn't even close to the end of it.
They were saying there was going to be a storefront on, I think, Fairfax Avenue across from Supreme in LA. They were going to do a comic book. They claimed there's a Discord
comic book?
Yeah, they said a comic book, a TV show, an MMORPG. And at one point, yes. And then Jesse Liu at one point said that the future of this thing you would control using your brain logic. It is insane.
Am I the only one who doesn't know what brain logic control is? Look, when I first heard this, I thought this cannot be right. This project is already crypto plus NFTs plus clean energy plus comic books. Surely they aren't going to wrap in AI as well, right?
The ultimate goal is that each NPC will be powered by AI algorithms, and then you will be interact directly with them using your natural language and your brain logic. I think that will be the ultimate goal. And when I say ultimate goal, I don't think that's like a 10 years plan. I think, in the next couple of years, we might just have a very good chance to achieve it.
Oh, he did. He promised it in 2 years. Okay, well, why not toss in AI to the buzzword salad? In fact, I guess it maybe relates it more to Rabbit. Maybe we do have the connection, right? The brain logic interface is the connection. I mean, why not just make it the Matrix while you're at it?
I mean, it surely is a Matrix to my extent and to the original concept of the Matrix, that you will be reborn with your alter identity in this metaverse, and whatever you do in the real world matches the exact consequences in the digital world.
Okay, did this man just do the if you die in the game, you die in real life, unironically, while selling NFTs? The answer is yes. And my only follow-up question is, if you get scammed in the metaverse, do you get scammed in real life in this world too? Look, I'm not here to stump for the bigwig venture capitalists who lost their faces on this. At the end of the day, these are both consumer-facing businesses. They got real people to invest real money into both the $200 Rabbit R1 and into this Gamma NFT project. Both are overhyped. One just already didn't deliver what they promised, while the other is working on fixing it. So, what can be done here? Well, for one, the minimum is that the Gamma NFT holders should be refunded the money they spent. I mean, this isn't even my crazy, wacky suggestion. Jesse suggested it himself in those Clubhouse calls.
And I better pay my money to collect your NFT back if you think this is just an NFT hype and dump project. I have to say that. So the communities will have my words. Anyone that is not envisioning the Gamma to the stage 2 or 3, just want to make a couple of E's out of stage 1, reach out to me. I will buy your NFTs. Okay, I will buy your Gammas and get the fuck out. All right?
All right. We'll take you up on that. Yes, I got a haircut. So I reached out again to Jesse about these refunds, but he didn't respond again. The Rabbit team did, though. They told me Jesse would not refund investors. The quote was out of context. The project was never abandoned. It was actually open sourced. What does that mean? Well, Rabbit claims the Gamma team delivered everything they promised in 3 stages. The one problem is the 3 stages they gave me aren't the 3 stages they promised. The metaverse, by the way, they said they created too, is not a metaverse. It's an Unreal Engine project file that I downloaded to play. It's based on a starter game called Lyra. You can see the starter assets here. And the things Gamma did do made the game so buggy that it crashed every minute. But it gets worse. The Rabbit team denied Gamma ever promised the carbon negative coin, which they repeatedly promised. They said the coin you referred to never materialized, nor was it ever promised or delivered. Now, obviously, I thought I had a stroke. Here I was listening to Jesse promise it. But also, he even put it in a video saying, explaining Gamma with our roadmap.
Ultimately, our efforts will lead to the Gamma token, the first ever carbon negative cryptocurrency powered by our sun. Together, we will create a sustainable future for all life on the planet we call home. Join the Discord today and meet your fellow crew members. Gamma.
I don't know how they could have been more clear. I think it's amazing to have them say now, we never promised that, only to find a roadmap video with you promising, in big letters, carbon negative cryptocurrency. It's just gaslighting at this point to pretend otherwise. What is funny is that Rabbit also mentions clean energy initiatives they say they did, like reducing gas fees. But again, that's not what they promised. They promised a clean energy grid. Jesse also promised it on Discord. His post was in Chinese, but he's clearly talking about open sea transactions being used to buy land to build the clean energy grid, which is going to help mine Gamma coins, which is exactly what he said on Clubhouse. I mean, these people are contradicting themselves in multiple languages. So I'll let you decide at the end of the day if the Rabbit team is being honest here. Towards the end, they even tried to tell me that Gamma, in our opinion, and as stated in the fact sheet, has no connection with Rabbit. But the fact sheet they're talking about, they sent me in a document called Gamma Project Fact Sheet. You can't just declare your own facts when it's the same company who made both things, the Rabbit and the Gamma Project. How can you say there's no connection? But after realizing no accountability would be taken and no refunds would be given by this project, I began to feel bad for Gamma investors. It made me wonder, what else is this team hiding? Well, I decided to find out. Logan Paul is refunding people he scammed if they promise to stop suing him for the vastly larger amount he may owe them. And honestly, I'm conflicted because on the one hand, victims getting money is always great. And I'm proud that our investigation led to some real world consequences. But I can't pretend that things are fixed or fine for people who entrusted me with their story when that's just not true. So here's the real, more complicated story in 3 parts: the refund offer, the zoo tokens, the lawsuit, starting with the most important part. And if you get one thing from this story, this should be it. These are the estimated damages in CryptoZoo, $18.5 million, which comes from a combination of ZooCoin and NFT sales. And then this, much smaller percentage of that pie, is what Logan is actually offering to refund, on the condition, though, that all of the people who spent the last year suing him for the larger damages drop their case. So that's a refund of only 12% to drop 100% of the case that, as far as I can tell, Logan may be losing. Put in that light then, this refund starts to look less like a good faith attempt to make things right and more like a cynical bargaining chip to avoid getting in even more trouble. And a careful look at these refunds conditions show that Logan is even less serious of a person you may give him credit for. Logan is offering only a 1-month claim window for this refund, given a year after waiting, and hidden in this wall of text is the most shocking part, which is that he's not releasing the CryptoZoo game at all, which I know we all kind of knew that, but is actually insane. Because that's the thing, to be clear, he's sold millions of dollars of NFTs for and tens of millions of dollars of in-game CryptoZoo tokens for. I knew he wasn't going to make it, right? We all get that. But I watched for 3 years as Logan's fans, and that's what these investors were. They were fans of Logan Paul. They spent 3 years begging this guy to make this game. And the entire time, he told them he was working on it. And I thought, even at my most pessimistic, that Logan would at least crap out some abomination that he described as a game that limped past our lowest collective expectations. But I was wrong. I mean, I wasn't wrong the first time he said I was wrong when he said he was going to still finish the game. I was wrong that he was going to do it at all.
But even after 12 months of work, you've still managed to overlook one crucial piece of information. See, even though I've said it's coming so many times, you've assumed that CryptoZoo isn't being made. Who are you to decide when the development timeline ends? Trust me, CryptoZoo is coming. I will make damn sure of it.
Oops. So much for making damn sure of it, because there's no game. This is what makes this such a massive con. This guy sold millions in NFTs, tens of millions of Zoo tokens, and he's not even going to release the thing he promised this whole time. This is why it's such a slap in the face. These investors spent 3 years waiting for a game. Not only that, 2 years waiting for an update, which he never gave, and then a year suing him. And after all of that, all he offers is a 12% refund, no game, 30 days to accept. So look, Logan's already taking heat for making good on a promise that he made a year late, but that's not even true. He's not making good on this promise because it's not the same promise. Last year, what he promised was no strings attached buyback and you get a game. This year, it's please drop your lawsuit and you don't get a game, which is incredible to me that there are influencers out there like KSI parading this around like a win for Logan Paul, like he's some sort of hero for offering a year late, half-baked settlement offer. KSI says, what will the haters say now? I don't know. How about where's the game? Where's the art? Where's the millions invested? Where's the motivation for this tweet? Oh, wait. KSI is a co-founder with Logan and Prime. So, of course, that makes KSI Logan's new biggest fan. But seeing as how Logan treats his biggest fans, don't say I didn't warn you. So that's part one, the refund. Now part two is the Zoo tokens. Remember, there were two parts to CryptoZoo, the Zoo tokens and egg NFTs. Now, the tokens were the vast amount of damages that were actually caused, while the NFT sales were much lower. Logan conveniently wants to refund this much smaller part of his game, the NFTs, while pretending that these Zoo tokens were never a real part. They were just gambling. Now, this was sort of less bad when the game was still going to come out because, it made some sense. Maybe you'd still have these tokens, but now it makes no sense at all. From Logan's statement, this buyback is a way for me to make whole those who intended to play CryptoZoo. The buyback is not intended to compensate those who gambled on the crypto market and lost. So he's describing people who bought his in-game currency as gamblers. But that's confusing because the whole point of these Zoo tokens was to buy the egg NFTs and play the game. That's literally how it worked according to him. So instead, he calls people gamblers, despite also saying, quote, Zoo token was created to support the CryptoZoo game and its players. It was, quote, not intended to be an investment vehicle. So how can he say that, then turn around and say people who bought this were gambling? If it's not an investment, how can you refund people who intended to play CryptoZoo if you don't refund people who bought the token that was, quote, created to support the CryptoZoo game? You can't. It makes no sense. And this is why I say this isn't even close to a full refund. And now that he's abandoning the game, what we actually have is millions of dollars of in-game currency Logan sold that he won't pay back. Which brings us to the final part of this story, the third part, the lawsuit. After telling all his fans that they were gamblers who lost, Logan has one final surprise. He says, quote, I have filed a lawsuit in federal court in Texas to hold these bad actors accountable, people who ruined CryptoZoo. But what Logan doesn't tell you is that Texas lawsuit is something he's being sued in already. He's a defendant in the lawsuit that he links in his tweet. He's just cross-suing his co-defendants. Like, he's already being sued, and he's just re-suing the same guys who are already being sued. And who are these secret bad actors Logan's going to hold accountable anyways? Turns out it's his employees he hired, Eddie Ibanez and Crypto King, which all of us already knew because I investigated the story a year ago. But imagine my surprise when Logan Paul tries to rewrite my investigation to pretend he did all the work himself and uncovered the real scam of CryptoZoo while simultaneously trying to erase his part in it. He says, and I find this very funny because I spent a year on that story, quote, this lawsuit is the result of an exhaustive investigation that included the review of the entirety of conversations. You'd be forgiven to think he was quoting my investigation. He's not. He copied it and tried to rewrite it to make himself look good. In this lawsuit, he says things like, hey guys, turns out Eddie Ibanez's entire backstory was a fabrication, including the MIT NFL story. Can you believe it? It's like, yeah, we know. And then he goes, yeah, well, you won't believe what I discovered. Crypto King secretly sold tokens. Yeah, we know. Logan just shamelessly rips off my work claim for claim without citing me. I mean, he says things like Mr. Greenbaum would later admit that he made millions of dollars through his surreptitious sales of Zoo tokens. But where did Logan find that admission? Was it perhaps when he investigated my video? Time and time again, this lawsuit copies my work. but is embarrassed to cite it. So they even have to say things like, based on public reports. What public report? Mr. Ibanez made approximately $1.7 million from selling zoo tokens. I could swear I've heard that before. And for my calculations, he made about $1.7 million. Now look, I don't usually mind people using my work, but it's kind of a little strange that Logan is simultaneously trying to discredit my work, saying this lawsuit is not based on snippets of conversation taken out of context, a snipe at my investigation, while then stealth quoting it to pretend that they did any real legwork. And look, if you found that shameless, that he tries to steal my work and pass it off as his own investigation, this next part gets even worse. Because Logan's story this whole time has been that it's all other people's fault. You know, it's just bad actors. Everyone but him was bad. He was always well-intentioned. But his timeline contradicts him. According to his investigation, which is actually my investigation, in August and October of 2021, he learns that Jake Greenbaum and Eddie Ibanez are bad news, and he kicks them out of his team. So what does he do after that? He's gotten rid of the bad actors, can't blame them anymore, right? Does he make CryptoZoo? No. For a full year before I made my video, Logan Paul had full control over his project. He admits it in his own lawsuit, and he did nothing. He said nothing. So how does he avoid accountability now? Well, enter the whipping boy Jeff. That's right, manager Jeff is making one last appearance. Logan blames Jeff for screwing up September 2021 through 2022, but you know what he doesn't mention? What he'll never mention? The real reason the project didn't get back on track is not because of Eddie, not because of Crypto King, but because Logan's own team stopped paying developers who are working on rebuilding the game. So those people stopped working on CryptoZoo. And that's when I found it. The game was dead. It had been dead for months. And that's when I made a big stink out of it. Meaning, it was 100% within Logan's power to save this game. I'm not saying nobody else did bad things, but Logan ultimately had over a year to launch it, to make things right, and he didn't. For financial reasons. Not because someone backstabbed him. He just didn't want to spend the money it would take to make things right. And you know what? That is still true now. It is still 100% within Logan Paul's power as a near billionaire with Prime to make things right, fully right, with his fans who he scammed. And if he gave a full refund, we would all celebrate. Me foremost. But will he? Or will he try to dodge responsibility, cheap out, rip his fans off, and avoid accountability? I think it's the latter. So, those are the three main points. You're all caught up. To recap, part one, refunds. They're being used as a bargaining chip to drop a lawsuit, and so he never has to produce this game, which has been promised for 3 years, and he's sold tens of millions of dollars for. Part two is the zoo tokens. He's pretending they're not for a game that they definitely were for to avoid refunding people, when in fact he admits they were created to support the game. Part three is the lawsuit, where he stole my investigation, tried to pass it off as his own, but just cuts out the part where he did everything wrong and leaves out the entire year where he was solely in charge of the project. No bad actors. He could have fixed everything, but he didn't because he's cheap and doesn't want to pay anybody. Anyway, I hope that catches you up with what's been going on, and I hope we as a community can have the nuance and complexity to hold in our minds two things at the same time as true. One, it's always good if victims get any money back, and we should celebrate that. However, number two is that doesn't mean we can't fight for 100% of what they deserve. And Logan Paul is not a hero for doing this or making things right. He's a serial scammer who's offering a minority refund as a last-ditch effort to save his wallet and his reputation. Sam Bankman-Fried is back in jail. Previously, he was living in a multi-million-dollar house on house arrest, but according to prosecutors, he's been using that time to tamper with witnesses twice, which, you know, is highly illegal, but I guess who knew a guy who stole billions of dollars couldn't be trusted? But even more surprising is learning the fact that he apparently has been talking about this show in between tampering with those witnesses on house arrest, which we're going to talk about. But first, if you're just catching up with what's been going on with SBF, it's been a while, and here's the 30-second recap since we talked. Sam Bankman-Fried committed the largest financial fraud since Bernie Madoff, and he's a terrible League of Legends player. So, already 2 strikes, but it gets worse because he proceeded to go on the world's most annoying apology tour after that, talking to everyone.
Please ask him if he thinks what happened was fraud.
I mean, I'm deeply sorry about what happened.
A lot of people look at you and see Bernie Madoff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's who I am at all.
The reason it was so annoying is that Sam kept repeating how sorry he was that none of it was his fault. $8 billion from his company went missing, and he has no idea how it happened. He blames it all on his ex-girlfriend he hired, but that's not his fault either. He even tried selling that story to me back in December and accidentally admitted that he may have been commingling funds, which is a huge no-no. And when he admitted that, he got really mad at me, and he said this.
But you have monopolized all of these discussions, CoffeeZilla. You need to let others speak, and you need to respond to what I'm saying and not grandstand as much here.
Now, I'm sad to say that is where me and Sam officially got off on the wrong foot, and that will play into the story later. But 6 days after my grandstanding, Sam himself would be grandstanding in handcuffs because he was arrested in the Bahamas and then extradited over to the United States, where he faced 13 charges. Mostly it was fraud, but there were some campaign finance charges in there as well. Because get this, in between orchestrating billions of dollars being siphoned from customers, he also had the audacity to try to buy, the government. Republicans, Democrats, it didn't matter. He wanted to buy their influence for the laws he wanted to pass, which is a story, by the way, which we broke with the citizen journalist Tiffany Fong. Here that is.
You need about the same amount of targets here.
No matter how you slice it, things were just looking bad for Sam at this point, and good for truth, justice, and the American way of waiting until billions of dollars are stolen before you do anything. And since we last talked, mostly things have remained the same, although there have been some changes that for Sam have been a mixed bag, legally speaking. For example, his team got 5 of the charges against him delayed to a future trial. Not only that, they almost got the campaign finance charges dismissed on a technicality until they didn't. But most importantly, and the biggest problem for Sam, is that he can't seem to stop breaking his bail conditions and getting caught doing so, which brings us to today. See, when you get out on bail, you're essentially making a promise. They won't lock you up, but in return, you gotta follow some basic rules. You gotta be where they tell you gotta show up to your trial, and you can't do certain things, like commit crimes, contact witnesses, or for instance, try to call the press 1,000 times and send 100 emails to the media to try to manipulate the narrative. Can you guess which one Sam broke? It actually got so bad, by the way, that the judge had to tell SBF to stop contacting potential witnesses with encrypted messaging apps, which led to him getting banned from smartphones, which somehow he still managed to call these reporters, and apparently then proceeded to leak the private diaries of his ex-girlfriend, Caroline Ellison, who, by the way, is going to be testifying against him in this trial and was a key figure as she ran Alameda Research. This, by the way, is what you call witness tampering, and it was the final reason that SBF's bail was revoked after he repeatedly violated it. Allegedly, he had over 100 phone calls with that New York Times reporter who then wrote this story inside the private writings of Caroline Ellison, star witness in the FTX case. And I don't think it takes a genius to realize why the lead suspect in a criminal trial leaking damaging documents to the New York Times about the star witness against him is so obviously wrong. Now he's back in jail. Although he's not going to have to wait long because October 2nd is when his criminal trial starts, which you can guarantee we will be covering extensively. I've been waiting for this moment since the day I heard Sam Bankman-Fried might go to prison for the rest of his life. But, I was surprised to find out that Sam hasn't stopped thinking about me either, according to a leaked phone call we received. I apparently have a strange relationship with this guy I wasn't even aware of, which is only the second most surprising relationship I found out Sam had this year. Just recently, we discovered in one of his 1,000 phone calls to the press, he talked to the reporter Tiffany Fong, who we mentioned earlier we've featured, and he name dropped me, CoffeeZilla, as someone he particularly hates.
Yeah, no, that was the other one I really hate. I think it's CoffeeZilla, the guy who yelled at me for associating with bad people.
Now, I'll be honest, I feel horrible about this. Did I yell at Sam for associating with bad people? How could I do that when he only created the biggest fraud since Bernie Madoff? The poor guy, his feelings are clearly hurt. Guilt by association, it's just not fair. But I did wonder, who specifically was he upset that I brought up?
I gave two examples.
The Dan Friedberg?
Dan Friedberg and Mark Cohen were his examples.
How dare I use examples of Dan Friedberg being hired at FTX as their chief compliance officer, you know, Dan being a notorious lawyer known for covering up a cheating scandal in poker, where they apparently had a backdoor God mode where one player could see the other player's hands and no one knew about it. How could that possibly be relevant that the same guy who covered that up was also hired to Sam's company, which now we know had a secret backdoor used to steal money from FTX customers? Could it be that he was hired for his past, not in spite of it? Or maybe it's just coincidence that the same guy is now being accused in a new lawsuit of paying, quote, exorbitant hush money to a former FTX employee. All I pointed out was that hiring Dan Friedberg as your compliance officer makes as much sense as hiring Jack the Ripper to work in a woman's hospital. It doesn't happen on accident. But now I also want to talk about the other person he mentioned, Mark Cohen. I simply pointed out that it's the same lawyer who defended Ghislaine Maxwell, you know, the trafficker associated with, you know who, which, you know, I'm not saying that hiring a criminal defense lawyer who defends the worst criminals makes you the worst criminal. Just like I'm also not saying that hiring a compliance officer who allegedly covers up potential crimes means you're covering up potential crimes. But I am saying that Sam really knows how to pick his lawyers. My boy really assembled the dream team. You know, it's like he hired the Legion of Doom and now is saying, hey, why are you bringing that up? Why is that relevant to whether I'm involved in Doom-related activities? But you know, why am I really even defending myself? I suppose it's kind of a badge of honor to be hated by this guy, this fraudster, this bronze tier trash. But I can't help but feel a little sad that me and Sam have grown so far apart since the days I would ambush him in Twitter spaces. So I want to continue the dialogue here, the strange relationship me and Sam have together, because look, I know he watches the show, he talks about it, and apparently is being allowed a laptop in prison for some reason. So I thought I'd take this moment to offer a short message to Sam himself. Hi. How's prison? I hope you're hating it. And I look forward to covering your trial. That's the truth. I'll try not to grandstand so much this time for your sake. Oh, and give me a call sometime. I mean, 1,000 calls to the media and I don't get one, Sam? What the hell's wrong with you? I thought we had something special. Text me on Signal. They'll never find out.
Binance agrees to pay $4.3 billion, and their CEO has pled guilty to violating money laundering rules and has stepped down, claiming, quote, I make mistakes and I must take responsibility. Now, in exchange for a king's ransom and the king's head, the DOJ is expected to settle their criminal investigation with Binance. Some think this is the end for the world's largest crypto exchange. Others believe it's a glorified speeding ticket that's a net win for crypto. But what should you believe? It depends on how much you trust Binance. Let me explain. First, context. For the past year, there's been criminal and civil investigations into Binance, with the SEC, DOJ, and CFTC all investigating accusations of Binance accepting US investors while not being regulated, and then trying to hide that fact. Why would they do that? Well, according to their CEO, Changpeng Zhao, who I'll be calling CZ, quote, if we block US users from day one, Binance will not be as big as we are today. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So, money is the answer to why they did something illegal. It's always the answer, right? This is because, as CZ claims, 20 to 30% of Binance's potential revenue was from the US market. So no wonder they kept US investors. But after years of no control, CZ eventually acknowledged the risk of allowing US customers. He says, quote, "We do need to block by IP and also know your customer." Now, this might seem like a step in the right direction, except for a critical decision. CZ maintained a subset of valuable US users on Binance. Basically, they kicked off the broke people to look good, but conspired to keep their high-value clients, quote, contacting US VIP users offline through direct phone calls, leaving no trace. The VIP team would allegedly register a new separate account for an offshore entity while the user transferred their holdings to the new account. So it would look like that person was no longer from the US. According to CZ himself, the company had to be very careful to skirt the line using careful language. Quote, "We cannot say they are US users, and we want to help them. We say we miscategorize them as US users, but actually they are not." So that's bad, but it actually gets worse. See, the new filing from the DOJ shows these problems extended beyond the US to Binance outright allowing money launderers to move money through their platform. One compliance employee even wrote, quote, "We need a banner. Is washing drug money too hard these days? Come to Binance. We got cake for you." What? An example of this was when Hydra, a popular Russian darknet marketplace, transferred $106 million in Bitcoin to Binance.com and laundered their money through it. But not only did Binance have little to no money laundering controls in place, even when illegal funds were found, Binance would make special exceptions for their VIPs. In one example, a user was told to be careful with his flow of funds, especially from darknet like Hydra. He can come back with a new account, but this current one has to go, it's tainted. But what is the point of flagging money laundering if you're just gonna tell the guy to start a new account and try harder next time to not get caught? And I bring these issues up not just because they're pertinent to the settlement, which they are, but also because these issues demonstrate a problem Binance might have moving forward. Setting aside for a moment this $4.3 billion fine, part of this agreement is the expectation Binance is gonna stop these illegal activities, clean up their act, have an independence compliance monitor for 3 years. But you have to ask yourself, was Binance so large and attractive to crypto people in spite of its loose money laundering controls, offshore unregulated status, or was it because of it? What percentage of Binance's revenue vanishes overnight with increased scrutiny? I don't know the answer, but it certainly isn't zero. And speaking of challenges Binance faces, now let's put the $4.3 billion fine back on the table, which itself is a problem. Can Binance afford to pay it without dipping into customers' funds and becoming insolvent? Well, once again, it depends on how much you believe Binance. See, Binance regularly publishes a proof of reserves, which shows they have customer assets backed one-to-one and billions of dollars on top of it. According to those, yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. But proof of reserves don't fully show liabilities, causing people to call for a full audit for years now. But each time, it's met with a less than satisfactory response from their CEO.
Thus far, you haven't disclosed your liabilities, and I wonder why that is and whether you will.
Yeah, so we are working with the firms to do the audit of financials, liabilities, etc. But the audits don't reveal every problem. So,
no, but an audit from a Big Four auditor would reveal that, CZ. If you could get a Big Four auditor to say that, if you're saying that some of them don't want to work with you, that raises questions too. They don't want to work with you because you don't have the files and the data that would make them feel comfortable signing off and giving that stamp of approval?
Actually, many of them don't even know how to audit crypto exchanges. They don't really, when they audit, they're very used to auditing a firm.
Does Coinbase, Coinbase has a Big Four. Coinbase has a Big Four auditor?
Actually, I don't look at Coinbase. We don't really look at
I think so, though.
Now, hold on, wait a second. You're saying you can't get an audit, but then refuse to acknowledge that your competitors are working with auditors? That's a red flag. And it's pretty clear, look, we just don't know the full story. And I don't bring this up like as a boogeyman to scare you for no reason, telling you there's a monster under your bed, maybe. It's something you legitimately need to think about if you have money on Binance. How much do you trust Binance is telling the truth and trust them with your money? It's ultimately up to you. For me, I've always told you guys, keep your money off these exchanges because what you don't know can hurt you. Just listen to Binance's CEO answer questions about his company's ability to pay steep fines earlier this year and ask yourself, does he sound confident?
Would you be able to handle it if somebody asked you for $2.1 billion back? Would that be okay? Would you be able to still withstand things?
We're financially okay.
Including you have $2.1 billion to give away. If somebody came to claw that back, you'd still be fine?
We'll let the lawyers handle it. We are financially strong.
Honestly, the right answer is yes. We're financially strong is just not good enough. It's literally one of those answers that means nothing. And by the way, the real fine is double that. So especially in light of that large layoffs at the company earlier this year, I'm personally not optimistic about Binance's future. Although, as I said, without a more detailed look at their finances, maybe from an auditor, we can't know for sure. But whether or not you're personally optimistic or pessimistic, I think there's one thing we can all come together and learn from on this story. Questions, concern, skepticism of a company, it's not FUD, it's basic due diligence, and the crypto industry has a troubling trend of pretending otherwise. Earlier this year, CZ started dismissing FUD, fake news, attacks, with the number 4. Like, he would just post pictures of himself whenever there were problems at Binance and just do this, as if it magically warded off problems. So to see that same guy less than 12 months later pleading guilty to charges, it has a level of embarrassment that I've almost never seen before. I say almost because technically I saw this piece of media on the Most Humble Billionaire the day before that, from the same guy who also made the Sam Bankman-Fried puff piece. And it's definitely worse than this. So as we put CZ on the wall of shame, joining many other crypto people, I want to leave you with this wonderful piece of cringe. And as always, thanks for watching.
Hey, this is the richest guy in the world from crypto, and you don't even know him.
Hi, my name is CZ.
He made over $60 billion, but his mom still called him stupid. Let me tell you his incredible story.
$4 million was stolen from these podcasters, and I decided to investigate. I found the man responsible, but before we confront him, let's go back to where it all started, when Theo Von, a comedian, released this.
Our podcast was defrauded. We were stolen from. The company that did it is Cast Media, and the man that did it is Colin Thompson. In total, I've just between talking with folks, there's up to $4 million that I know of. We're in the 6 figures. I know of podcasts that are in the 7 figures.
Now, when I saw this, I had the same 2 questions on my mind as you do. 1, who is Colin Thompson? And 2, y'all are making 6 to 7 figures doing podcasts? I'm in the wrong line of work. I make like 4 figures here in the $10 million studio. Barely keep the lights on, okay? So I went to do some research, figure out, how these people are making all this money and also how they got robbed. And what I found out was that this company that stole the $4 million was a podcast network called Cast Media. Podcast network being a fancy name for saying they represent podcasts to find sponsors. All that stuff you violently skip with the fast forward 15-second button. Yeah, those guys. And Cast Media would basically work with them as a middleman. They would take some money, give the podcasters the read, and then give the money. Of course, taking a cut for themselves. Now, that is simplifying it a bit, and we'll go into the details more later. But what you need to know is that Cast Media hadn't been paying their talent on time. And what started as being late for maybe a month had turned into 7, 8, 9 months late on paying, until one day Cast Media and their CEO, Colin Thompson, says, hey, we're probably going to go into bankruptcy, which means you get nothing unless you take a special deal with another podcast network called Podcast One. Now, who's Podcast One? Well, it's an even bigger network, and they basically say, hey, we'll acquire you, pay off what you're owed, if you sign a new deal with new terms with us. If you do, you'll get back some of the money you're owed now, some of the money you're owed over 2 years, and you'll also get stock in our company. But what stock? Well, Podcast Network stock, a company that wasn't public yet, but as of this video now is, and is down almost 50%. Now, if you took that stock in 2 years, you could sell it. How much it's worth at that point is dubious. Now, Podcast One would say they were just trying to help. It wasn't their debt, so it's a great deal.
Now, the more cynical view of this is that it's kind of strong-arming creators. You either take the deal or you'll never get what you're paid. I mean, podcasters like Jim Cornette were literally told, in the event that Cast is unable to close the Podcast One asset sale, it will likely declare bankruptcy. So take the deal or lose everything you're owed. And to make things stranger, Podcast One was paying Cast Media in stock for every podcaster that took the deal. So if you agreed and wanted the money you were owed, you're kind of bailing out the company that got you into this mess. So obviously some people didn't like that deal. Although understandably, others did and took the deal. And look, I'm not here to litigate whether those Podcast One deals are good or bad. Frankly, it's not the point of this video. All cleanups are gonna be messy. What I did wanna know though is how did that $4 million go missing in the first place? And to try to find out, I began to reach out to everyone, starting with Colin Thompson to ask for his side of the story. You're being accused of basically stealing $4 million. Your clients say you defrauded them. What's your side of the story?
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. I wanted to talk with you because I appreciate the work that you do. I appreciate your journalistic integrity, and I know that you're going to tell a fair story. Cast is sort of the dream of the vision of independence, free speech, not bound by sort of corporate norms, the ability and the backbone to support visionary, talented, unique, independent voices, people like Theo Von. Cast perspective was independence is the product. There were plenty of times where, we believed in a show, it ran into trouble, maybe it was canceled in one way or another, and canceled, quote unquote, and we stood by our creators, right? Continued to support them through that time, when maybe a more corporate organization wouldn't. We weathered the storm together. We believe truly that that's what, was unique and special about Cast, and my heart and soul is still in that vision. I'm a musician originally, and I got into this because I wanted to support shows that were bucking the trend, going against the grain, but unique and important to the broader dialogue.
But where's the 4 million? I mean, yeah, I hear you. Everybody's got a grand vision, but the grand vision, when we get to this point, everyone wants to know where the money is, not what the vision is.
Sure. We built an infrastructure at Cast that I was and am tremendously proud of. I believe that over the years, we generated better revenue for creators, paid them out more than other podcasts would necessarily be able to, because we invested heavily in an infrastructure, took an individualized approach, anecdotally. But you're saying you pay out more, but I mean, clearly that's, kind of not true, right? Wait, but you asked for my story. Do you mind if I just tell the story? We're getting to the financial difficulties. Stephen.
Sure.
Our vision, it really worked. Creators benefited, made a lot more money than they would have. And many creators do have more money in their pocket now because of that. However, during the period from February 2022 until February 2023, our unit economics changed drastically. Our revenue per download, which is an important metric for analyzing sales performance, free from content performance considerations, dropped by 58%. In other words, over the course of those 12 months, the revenue that we could generate on one download moved down by 58%,
Okay. That took 3 minutes to get to a real answer. And I've got to be honest, this whole conversation was about that painful. Talking to somebody who owes creators millions and he's telling you how he got them paid so much money is a little frustrating, but setting that aside, the central claim of Colin is that all of this happened because revenues dropped in 2022 and he just couldn't pay people on time. But as I spoke to people about Colin, I realized late payments weren't a new thing at all. People told me that was always the case. Okay, you joined them in 2018.
2018.
Yeah. So when did you start getting late payments? Basically, like they didn't come when they said they were going to come. And when did you stop getting full payments?
I can answer that right away. That was right from the first check we were supposed to get. It didn't arrive when he said.
It was never on time. It wasn't unusual if it was like a month late, a month and a half late. And then when it goes from, all right, a month late to 2 months late to 3 months late. And then I would say, hey, where's the deposit at? Go, Yep, they're trying to figure out, man. He says he has this whatever investment coming. You're gonna get this huge lump sum of money. So then that's didn't come. Then you're looking at, now you're looking at 4 months. Like, it was the money. Then you're looking at 6 months. Like, okay, man, where the hell is our money?
Yes, that's a huge problem. Of course, up till 2023, money had slowly started coming in, so people were letting it slide. But as these balances built up over time, eventually Brendan and Brian realized they were owed 400 grand on The Fighter and the Kid and upwards of 1.6 million across all their shows.
Now remember, Brian is just informed about Fighter and the Kid. I have to manage Thick Boy, Golden Hour, the other shows that are owed money. So Brian's like, can you believe this? I'm like, yeah, that 400 grand is terrible. Try 1.6 mil, bro. Right.
Wow, 1.6 million. What are we doing here? Now, I should be clear, Colin denies that there were these payment issues before 2022. Your Talent says they stopped getting paid as early as 2021, and they had issues and delays well before 2022.
No, I'm not aware of any difficulties before, the end of 2022, the beginning of 2023.
Then I talked to his business partner, and everything changed. He told me accounting was always a nightmare.
My name is Dustin Canals. I was Colin's business partner, as you would introduce me, and VP of Production and Creative Development with Gas Media.
One of the things Colin said is he was not aware of any accounting issues, early on. Is that true? Did you guys hear from Talent about, because every Talent I talked to said they were constantly complaining about accounting.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone from the beginning had complained about how long it took to get paid. The managers would constantly step in. I think all of his accounting was done through Google Sheets, basically, and it was just him. But he would never let me see everything. He wouldn't actually let me see what was coming in and what was going out. And I was like, well, I kind of need to get a whole picture. And he just wouldn't share it.
Oh, that is a red flag. And it also lines up exactly with what I heard from a lot of the creators. The accounting was always weird. People had to chase it down, and the numbers were a little screwy. It led them to distrust what they were getting from Colin.
I can tell you, us personally, what we estimate we are owed is what they told us they owed us, plus whatever we think they still kept billing for after that date. Plus, we don't know truly what the accounting is, because they stopped supplying accounting, and at one point earlier in the year, their accountant sent me 2 different sets of numbers of what money I was supposed to get. So I don't trust their accounting.
I can't emphasize enough. I heard this complaint over and over, not just from Brian last. Everyone was worried about the accounting, but a lot of people who spoke up were just anonymous because they were afraid of Colin suing them, which isn't surprising because Colin warned Brian, who started talking, quote, the ensuing damages if you were to cause this deal to unravel are within the region of $10 million to $20 million. Consider this a serious caution. It would lead to decisive legal action. So basically, he was threatening people and people are scared. But I realized that these payment issues, accounting issues, they were all clues, sure, but not the whole story. To really understand how it could be that Cast fell apart, we need another piece of the puzzle, which is minimum guarantees. Remember, I told you earlier that I was simplifying podcast networks. So let's go into the deeper waters. The truth is, these deals vary wildly, and some of the bigger podcasters demand something called a minimum guarantee, where they aren't just paid a split of ads, they're paid a guaranteed minimum every month. And podcasters love this because it means they don't have to wait so long to get paid. According to Colin, though, this is how he fell behind.
We had months in there where our gross profit margins were, literally negative prior to any operating expenses. Because the minimum guarantees that made economic sense when we made the deal were just completely underwater.
Basically, he overpaid. Cast made deals to bring people on in the first place, overpromised, and then couldn't pay. Even Colin's former business partner agreed with this, although he thinks some of the money went to Colin personally as well.
We've got Colin's narrative. As his business partner, you look at the situation, 4 million missing. The big question on everyone's mind, where did the money go?
Well, I think there's a couple places that the money has gone. One is he built a custom house. He was known for going on big, crazy vacations. He went to Hawaii multiple times in 2022 and was posting about it on his social media. There's not a question of was there money in that sense to be able to buy land where a lot of celebrities go to escape. But aside from that, the other thing that he has done is essentially make constant minimum guarantees to new talent to try to entice them to join Cast Media. So saying, I'll give you a 1 year guaranteed $250,000, $500,000, whatever his minimum guarantee is. Now, I've heard that even as soon as February of this year, he was offering multi-million-dollar minimum guarantees. So
at the same time where he claims his revenues are way down, he's offering multi-million-dollar minimum guarantees for talent.
Yes, yeah. So, his priority is trying to keep the new talent happy for a while, with essentially his whole goal of selling Cast to make big money in the end. But yeah, I would say that honestly, most of the money probably went to the minimum guarantees of other talent, instead of to the people that it was supposed to go to.
Wow. That might be the closest thing we have to a coherent answer on what happened to Cast Media. Although our story doesn't stop there, because obviously that's a pretty big accusation that some of the money may have gone to a house. So I decided to look into that and found that Colin Thompson indeed bought a $1.7 million house the same year as his financial troubles. And I also found out that right about the time he was talking about declaring bankruptcy, he moved that house into a trust where the trustee was a Wyoming LLC he set up, which from where I stood looked a lot like hiding assets from a bankruptcy right before a bankruptcy. But when I confronted Colin about this, he said, I had things completely backwards. The truth is he was hiding his property for a totally different reason, a very sympathetic reason.
We anonymized our address because we were getting threats in the last 30 days. There's been, there's been nothing untoward.
I think you can see though how other people might see it another way, where it looks like you're trying to shield it by hiding it from a personal name into a trust owned by an LLC. I mean, I'm in a very favorable state.
I assume you listen to the Jim Cornette episodes where they specify where I live, right? I assume you listen to the Jim Cornette episodes where they specifically call out where I live. We were really, really concerned. We were getting threats.
When I heard this, I was pretty alarmed, and I totally understood his fears. So I went to go ahead and look for the episode where Jim Cornette apparently specifically called out where he lived, but it wasn't there. Actually, Jim Cornette never mentions a specific address, but a general area. But way more damning for Colin's story is the fact that that episode came out in July, but Colin formed his LLC for moving the house in June. Before these threats ever happened, he's creating this shell company. So I found it very hard to believe. I pointed this out to Colin, and he said this, quote, they revealed general details, and I anticipated the possibility of this happening. Brian threatened it very specifically in my original email exchange with him back in May. So I got a hold of those emails. There was no threat in them. Instead, Brian said things like, consider this a serious caution. We're going to make sure to endlessly let all listeners know with great detail that Colin Thompson of Podcast One stole our money because he doesn't know how to run a business, which is sort of true. This guy doesn't know how to run a business. So I became increasingly convinced maybe, just maybe, Colin might be lying to me about why he hid his house in a trust with a Wyoming LLC trustee. Okay, I know this is a bit inside baseball right now, but it's important because I think it reveals intentions. Because I then looked up the website he used to create the LLC. And the website tagline for Colin's LLC is, quote, asset protection is our only focus. So, want to hide your house? Wrong company, not their focus. Asset protection? That's your guy. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised that he tried to say this wasn't the case. So I sent a screenshot of that to Colin saying, hey, you're obviously hiding assets in this company that specializes in
asset protection planning, where the other tagline, by the way, is creditors will be forced into a better settlement or to dismiss the case altogether. And when I sent that to Colin, he responded, quote, "I can't speak to what's written as marketing material on a website. I didn't write it." Come on, bro. We got you, okay? I can't go show up at an asset protection only store and say, hey, I was just looking for a little anonymity. That's not being honest. And look, I don't know how dumb this guy thinks we are, but in my opinion, what happened is pretty simple. I think Colin bought a $1.7 million house the same year as he had trouble paying people. I think his accounting was always sketchy. I think he overpromised people money to attract new talent. And I think in the end, he tried to sell it all to a bigger company and force these podcasters into raw deals. And worst of all, this is not a new story. Colin is not unique. Actually, the main reason I took this case is because we've all seen this story play out before. Sleazy business guy screws over artist or musician or podcaster. Look, to be honest, I wanted to find out how it happened, but I also wanted to find out how we can learn to prevent it in the future. Because to be honest, I'm as much in this media landscape as these guys. And I think the answer starts with how you get involved. How did Colin find and sign all these celebs? Well, the truth is, some people were introduced. Theo Von was introduced by Brendan Schaub. But I asked Brian and Brendan how they got involved. And their answer struck me as part of the problem. Was he just offering better deals than everyone else?
No. It's word of mouth. It's because what happens is they go, who is your agency? We don't know nobody, like, we're not interacting with these people all the time. What happens is it's like, if there's an agency that this person is with and this person is with, we go, do you make money? Yeah. All right. Can you hook me up? And then,
especially when comics are talking like, man, this guy's killing it for us, man.
Yeah.
I made 1.6 million this year. And like, damn, that's more than I made. Who you think you'd take me on? Then it becomes this like snowball effect, and and then everybody's there.
Yeah.
This is the issue. And look, it's not to absolve Colin. It's not to put any blame on anyone who got screwed over here. But the truth is, people are always led around with these dollar amounts. Oh, you made this much. That's how they get you in these bad contracts. And then they don't pay you and you're left chasing a Wyoming LLC to nowhere. So this isn't just about these podcasters. It's everywhere. It's about 360 deals in music, MCNs with YouTubers, and just honestly business people begging you to let them control your money and then you getting scraps. It's as disgusting as it is common, and I really hope that any aspiring people in media learn from these mistakes and scams and realize you don't need these middleman people most of the time. But more than that, do not trust people with your business who promise you the world. In fact, usually that's the worst red flag. Oh, you're going to make all the money. Just sign here. It's a trap. And you never know what's in the fine print until you read it. Just ask Dylan Dennis.
The guy's good. He's very smart. Very smart. He manipulates and twists the truth just the way he wants to get his people to believe a certain thing, hiding behind the veil of, I don't make money off this platform. I'm doing God's work. I'm doing justice. By the way, go join my Patreon. We're going to see the behind the scenes of my $10 million studio. $10 million studio. You got $10 million? Where did that money come from?
Well. CoffeeZilla. Looks like you don't have any more lifelines.
I wouldn't take a dirty deal.
Perhaps you should re-examine your past.
I think it's about time we tell the truth.
It's in his descriptions on his Patreon, which I joined. He kicked me off, though.